Okay. Let me ask you about, and Archie would know this pretty well, wouldn't you, Archie? Torsion bars. Connect lower control arms and the vehicle frame, right? Torsion bars. What can you guys tell me about torsion bars?
Adjust the ride height of the vehicle.
They do that, but what else do they do? Now, what is a torsion bar's job?
I don't know.
It's a spring. It's a spring. That's a torsion bar. It's a spring. The truck Archie just pulled apart. Him and they had to pull the torsion bar out in order to get the transmission out. Why? Why did you have to pull a torsion bar out?
Anyway.
Not just that. They were connected to the cross member that had to be removed before you pull the transmission out, right? And on each end of that torsion bar, what's each end of the torsion bar shaped like?
Oh
hey,
my God.
What's up with your bad self and everything? Archie, go grab me one of your torsion bars, buddy. Have a seat, Hannah.
We ain't working on that boat.
Huh?
We ain't working on that boat.
It ain't broken more, thanks to y'all. I'll get you right up. Y'all hooked her up fat.
Hey, boy, you got a haircut.
What you need, Lawrence? Huh? Need some money. You got some? No, man. I can't help you there. Oh.
He did what a lot of people do. He came without a pencil.
I did too.
Don't feel bad. I went to class without a pencil, but we didn't.
That's the greatest story ever. Can you please tell it again if we have time?
Maybe 3 more times. Well, if you have a time, like you have a day. If you have a mind.
Okay.
Them things are a pain.
Where? How long got you?
Yeah.
Shocks in the spring. Hold on.
Whenever you can.
Which one is that? I don't know.
All right.
Got it marked on there somewhere.
It's cold.
All right. You see what we have here?
Exactly what
This right here is a torsion bar. You might notice on each end, it's shaped like a hex, like a bolt. All right. Now, this is actually a spring, and this is what holds that truck up. Now, why do we use these on 4-wheel drive trucks, and we don't typically use them on 2-wheel drive trucks? Because there's a coil spring that can do the same job on a 2-wheel drive truck, but it's in the way of the 4-wheel drive axles. So you move the spring out of the way so the axle can go out to the wheel. You're going to use this torsion bar. Well, the cool thing about a torsion bar is there's an adjustment on it on this end out here. You can make it longer or shorter. Now, what everybody needs to recognize about these is these are marked. This one right here. If you look at it, I don't know if you can see it on my video or not, but it's got an L and an arrow. See that L and an arrow? Like that? This means it's the left-hand torsion bar, and it turns the direction of the arrow. If you put them on there backwards or upside down or, the other way than what they go, you're going to have problems with your suspension being too tight, and the little adjusters aren't going to want to go in there the right way and all that kind of thing. So the adjuster on the back, the part of it that anchors it on the back end, the front actually goes into the lower control arm.
Well, how can you make it lower and higher?
You got it's a screw. There's a jack screw. It changes. See, one end of it is hooked up like with a little wrench. It's specially made just to go on this. It's the back part of the suspension, and it's got a little jack screw in it. And when you turn it, it twists that bar. You see, as it twists the bar, it'll go up and down. Okay, put that back, Archie. That's a torsion bar. And it was pretty heavy, and I'm glad I'm giving it back to him, so I don't have to put up with that anymore.
You want to help with RV or not?
All right. A variable rate spring. Okay, torsion bars connect lower control arms in the vehicle frame. Is that true or false? They do. The lower control arm has got a wrench-shaped hole in it that fits right into, and then the other part. But you got to take that jack screw loose, and you got to use we use a ball joint separator. It's like a big C-clamp, and we push that thing up, and we just, it take it off its anchor and all that kind of stuff. A variable rate spring is made from a rod of constant diameter. Now that's not true. If it's a variable rate spring, it's not. It'll be skinnier on one end than the other. Right? My dad's '66 Chevrolet pickup truck.
He had no bugs.
Huh?
He didn't have no bugs.
No, we got a '66 Chevy pickup that was that he drove for doing work. You can't haul very much in a bug. We had lots of bugs.
Have you seen the new bug?
I like it.
Yeah.
I want
Okay.
one.
But anyway, see this. He had springs on his pickup that the top coils were farther apart than the bottom ones, and the reason for that was they acted like load levelers, and they'd also give you a decent ride. Because if you had a really tightly wound springs all the way up, it would ride like a Jersey wagon, which wasn't all that good anyway. But if you loaded that truck down, I took my dad's, that 3/4 ton Chevy, 66 Chevy pickup to the gravel place one time, and I told him to put a yard of gravel on it, which is a heck of a lot. Pickup can't usually haul a yard of gravel. And that guy said, "You sure you don't try to haul a yard of gravel on this truck?" I said, "Just put it on there. Put whatever you can put it." And he heaped it up. And he was amazed that the thing didn't squat down anymore. It did. Well, the reason it didn't is because the springs on that truck, when they bottomed out, it couldn't go any lower. It was like it had automatic load levelers. You see what I'm saying? So that's pretty cool. I mean, not automatic load levelers, but load springs, you know, that stop it from going down any farther.
Smaller at the top, right?
But, huh?
It used to be smaller at the top.
Yeah, well, actually, with the ones on his, if I remember right, were tightly wound at the bottom, and they had looser coils at the top. But now they were a constant diameter, but they were made for a different thing. Anyway, air springs are primarily used in automatic level control suspension systems.
True.
That is true. When you're steering and suspension stuff. And we talked about this before. If you ever jack up the black Crown Victoria, make sure you hop into the trunk and turn off that toggle switch. that rocker switch on the left side. Because if you don't, it squats down when you take it back off the lift. Some shock absorbers contain both hydraulic fluid and compressed nitrogen gas.
True.
That's true. You know, some of the people years ago, and the conventional wisdom in textbooks is that shock absorbers don't hold up the weight of the car. That's what they say. But that ain't true no more. Like on some of these front-wheel drive cars, like Tauruses and stuff, and the other cars that we see, those shock absorbers actually, whenever the car starts sitting too low in the front, you can replace the shocks and it will raise it up about an inch because they're nitrogen-charged shock absorbers. But if you look in all of these textbooks, every one of them just about will tell you that shocks don't support the weight of the car. The newer ones do. The older ones didn't. So that's not conventional. To prevent binding of anti-sway bar bushings, always tighten the bushing mounts or end links with the suspension suspended. All right, now, what is an anti-sway bar?
Oh, you skipped one.
Huh?
You skipped one.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. When one front wheel moves up, a stabilizer bar twists in an attempt to pick up the opposite wheel. When one front wheel moves up, a stabilizer bar twists in an attempt to pick up the opposite wheel. When you're talking about the stabilizer bar, and that, according to the book, the answer to that one's supposed to be true. But what we're seeing is, if your suspension, whenever you're turning, the car is turning, you're going to have the car is going to be like this in the front, and this wheel's going to be up in there, and this one's going to be farther out, right? And this, in other words, you're basically in a hard turn. Maybe I ought to. Okay, if I'm turning this wheel's turned that way, and that wheel's turned that way. But you can't see very much of this wheel because it's up in the picture. All right. Okay, so as it tilts, that anti-sway bar is hooked to the suspension so that it's forcing this to stay on the road instead of letting it come off.
I didn't have one on that little car I've been working on for a long time. I put one on it.
Yeah.
It's a different car.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it feels like it's about to roll over. Well, that's what a sway bar does. Now, I don't like the way they worded that question, but if you want to get it right according to the answer key, you'll put true there. That's the way that works. To prevent binding of anti-sway bar bushings, that's the same bar we're talking about, always tighten the bushing mounts or end links with the suspension suspended. Is that true? What happens if you've got the suspension suspended and you tighten those things up? Whenever you set it down, where does the suspension go? It goes up and it's going to bind them. So what you want to do is you want to tighten them with the weight of the car sitting on the suspension. That's what you want to do on that. And when we're talking about the bushings, the anti-sway bar runs from one side of the car to the other, and it's going to have an odd shape to it. And it hooks up to the lower control arm typically with a little link right here, and it's going to have these bushings right here that they're talking about. And there'll be a little saddle thing that'll have a bushing in them, and all that. So basically what you're going to do, before you tighten all that up, make doggone sure your car is sitting on the suspension before you tighten them. You can start all the bolts, let it sit on the suspension, tighten them up, and you'll be happier with the job. Most of the time, that's not going to make a whole lot of difference, but if you want to be a stickler for accuracy, you want to do it the right way, right? All right, compressed coil springs, I'll back up. Drive wheels on front-wheel drive vehicles have adjustable wheel bearings. They do not. They do not, right? Compressed coil springs store a great deal of energy, and they can cause severe physical injury if
That
mishandled.
hurt it very bad.
My gosh, yeah. That's one of the things that I thought was kind of comical was that this one boy that was in here didn't do any of the worksheets in steering and suspension hardly, or I say he didn't. He did some of them, but he didn't do them all. But he did just enough worksheets to where he could get a passing grade. The problem is he never took a strut apart and put it back together. You know, I gave you all about taking a strut apart and put it together? And so the following semester, he had to put a timing chain or timing belt on a PT Cruiser. And in order to do that, you got to pull the strut out. Okay, so what did he do whenever he got ready to pull the strut out? He had never pulled a strut out in the previous semester. I thought I smelled something. Where's uniform in? All right. And I got that girl in there. I think if she's still in there, is there a girl in there? If there is, tell her to hand me that check. There's a check laying face down.
Y'all laughing at me?
But anyway, I got about this guy check here right quick.
Alright.
Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say was, what Hunter did, that guy's name was Hunter.
Was it
and he
Hunter
took-
Brown?
Hunter Brown.
It was
Yeah,
Hunter
it was
Brown.
Hunter Brown. He took that right in the middle of the doggone strut is what holds the polish rod, right? And all that spring pressure is against that. And what did he do? Was he took, just a second, let me write this.
You sure?
And this is 27. All right, take all that and put the paperwork in there over this.
All right, I'm gonna talk to my manager, updating your uniforms at no charge.
Okay. Sure, that sounds good.
You've had them for long now.
I need to get some more patches and stuff, or we can move these, but that's fine.
Well, I'll just see if
See if
we
you can
have
transfer
those
them?
and see if
Yeah.
we can, not transfer them necessarily, but get new ones of those two.
Okay.
Do you
Yeah,
have
well, I'll
any
have to get these, you can't get them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have to buy these because you can't get them unless you're certified.
All right,
The American flag patch, is something that you.
we've got those.
Yeah, I know, that's where I got these before.
Okay, do you have any new certifications?
I can get some, I can order them and get them pretty quick. I don't
Okay.
have real.
Well, let me talk to him first, see if we can't update those. and,
Okay. Sure. All right. Now listen to what he did here. He took this impact wrench and he put it right in the middle of that shock absorber with that middle bolt, and he just buzzed that off with the shock still on the car. Everything came apart. Well, he didn't get hurt or anything, but the reason the jig was up on that because I went walking by over there and it's laying in pieces all over the bench over here. And I said, why in the world did this happen? Then I remembered Hunter Brown never did that worksheet. I kept telling him to do it, and he just never did it. So that's how you exhibit your ignorance. And if you happen to bobble the ball and don't do the worksheets here like you're supposed to, and you get out there, incidentally, I talked to Lamont about you. He said he's going to be calling you to talk to you some more. They're going to process your application and all that. So I talked to him yesterday. But anyway, but the long and the short of it was, what I did years ago, and this is not anything that you need to do because you can't put the shock back together if you take it apart this way. But when I first started doing struts, oh gosh, this was 1978 or 77 or whatever. I knew that spring had a pretty good bit of pressure on it, and I laid it on the shop floor, and I took the impact wrench. Okay, so you can tell if the shock absorber is wore out and needs to be replaced. If you perform a bounce test, the front end of the vehicle bounces more than once. The connection between the wheel, spindle, steering knuckle assembly, and the control arm is provided by a what?
Tie rod in.
All right. What is this? What's the steering knuckle, spindle, whatever?
I think it's B.
That's this piece right here. That's this piece right here that your wheel is on. Right? You got a spindle here. And your wheel is here, right? Okay. And it's connected basically like that. Okay. So you basically, let's say you're going to make something like that. You got a control arm up here. You got a control arm down here. Right? And there's ball joints making this connection. There has to be ball joints because it has to move up and down, and it's also got to turn. So you have to put ball joints on there.
Oh, I was right. I said B.
Hey, what's they got a Heim joint now.
Huh?
Called a Heim joint.
Time joint?
Yeah, it deletes the ball joints.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'll bring one up here tomorrow.
That's outstanding. Okay, that sounds pretty good. We'll look at that and talk about it. Now, on the, do you guys know what sprung and unsprung weight is? on the suspension system?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody's talking about, have you ever read that in any magazine article where it's saying, too much unsprung weight or too much sprung weight? Unsprung weight is the weight that's sitting on the ground that's not riding on the spring.
Okay.
Like the tires,
Everything on it.
everything that's tires and brakes, and that ain't riding on the spring. It's sitting on the ground, right? Now the rest of the body of the car is riding on the springs. That's sprung weight.
Okay.
Right. All right, so that's what you're talking about there. So, but anyway, your upper and lower control arms, if you draw that the right way, basically that's a very simple, the lower control arm, upper control arm. Now let me tell you about this too. Have you noticed that some of your foreign car vehicles, if you look at the lower control arm from the top, your lower control arm is real skinny like that, right? And it'll have a bar going out here to make it strong so that it won't break off. You ever seen that? You ever seen that design that way? That's the way that that's the way to do that. They got a real skinny one. But if they don't have this, the way they'll do it is they'll make it like that. See that? See how the difference in the design is? If you've got an A-frame, it's stronger, but if you just got this one skinny little lower control arm, it'll have a brace coming off of it. And in some cases, that'll be how you set your caster. You actually lengthen and shorten that long rod, going off to the front like on a Honda car. The older Honda cars were like that. You'd actually have long threads on that strut rod, as they call it. But anyway. All right, let's move on. So number 11 is actually a BSL ball joint. When a front suspension system problem exists, do all of the preliminary services except what? If you've got a suspension problem, you're supposed to do every one of these except for, A, inflate the tires to the correct pressure and make sure all the tires are the same size. Is that right? Inspect the vehicle ride height. Is that true?
Yes.
Inspect the springs for collapsed or broken coils or broken leaves.
Yes.
Perform a wheel alignment.
It's a dog.
Now, the performing a wheel alignment is not a preliminary service, is it? Something you're supposed to be doing, but it's not preliminary. Okay. An independent rear suspension, where the wheels can move up and down independently of each other, is a what?
Strut top rear. Yep.
What is it? Is it coil spring rear suspension? Is it strut type rear suspension? Is it leaf spring rear suspension? Is it twin I-beam rear suspension? What was it that made twin I-beam so special when they put it on the front of Ford trucks?
I didn't know that yet. What's that
Oh,
mean?
heck yeah, 1966, they put twin I-beam on there.
What's that mean?
Twin I-beam meant that you had on the old trucks, you had let me make sure I'm in my picture here. You made you had one beam, and it had, on a twin I-beam, you break that in half, and you had this I-beam hooked up here, and you had another I-beam hooked up here.
Oh, okay.
See, why you've seen that before, right? And what can you find it on?
Old Hampton?
No, I mean, every Ford truck made, but except four-wheel drives, every Ford truck made between 66 and 96. They didn't do away with the twin I-beam on the Ford trucks until 97. Now on the front of four-wheel drives, like on the Bronco, the suspension actually was not independent because it had an axle in there. But they would, take that back. They did have that thing fixed up so it would have independent suspension even though it was four-wheel drive. They didn't just have an axle tube in the front. Which is, pretty interesting how they did that. But have an independent front suspension. Now, what about a 63 Pontiac Tempest? You have never heard of that? Oh, come on, you have two. What about you? Anybody in here ever heard about it?
Heard about what?
63 Pontiac Tempest.
Alright.
Okay, now what about you? Okay, now how many of y'all have seen My Cousin Vinny? That movie, My Cousin.
Oh, the movie?
Yeah. Yeah, you saw that, didn't you? There's a lot of filthy language in that movie, but the fact is, that girl that you got on the witness stand at the end, she says, the only car that could have made these marks on the road whenever they left the scene of that crime is a 63 Pontiac Tempest.
Why did you say that?
Because that's the only car that was made by GM that had independent rear suspension. And she was looking at the spinning, the marks of the car spinning. That movie, if you're not a car nut, like I say, I'm not advocating the nasty language in that movie, but that is a really funny movie. And that girl, when they put her on the witness stand, they were trying to make her look like a dummy, and she turned everything around because she knew all about cars and engines and suspension. Do you remember that? Did you see that?
No, I ain't seen that.
You saw it, didn't you? Did you saw it, Wes?
No, yeah, I seen it a long time ago. I don't really
Yeah,
remember.
but anyway, she talked about a 63 Pontiac Tempest and all that in there. All right, now then, let's move on.
Stroke tight rear suspension.
All right, y'all pay attention from that corner of the room.
So it's C, right?
All right,
13
yeah.
C.
That's basically going to be 13 is going to be a C, right? I figured some of y'all would have seen that. Most of the time, if somebody's a car nut, they have seen my cousin Vinny.
I've seen it. It's
Yeah.
just been a long time.
Huh?
It's been a while.
Yeah, but anyway,
How you wasn't born back then?
a front
I know I wasn't
suspension.
born. That don't mean
A
anybody.
front suspension where the weight of the vehicle is supported, now listen up, by twisting spring action is called what? Twisting spring action. We talked about it.
torsion bar.
Torsion bar, bingo.
You were wrong.
Everybody happy about that? Okay, so what you got here?
We're done.
All right, somebody off the top of your head tell me the answer to number 6.
False.
To prevent binding of anti-sway bar bushings, always tighten the bushing mounts to the length of the suspension suspended.
False.
False. Why? Why don't you want them suspended? Because
Because
you
they'll bind
gotta
up.
try to put it where it lives.
They'll bind up when you put pressure on.
Yeah. Here's something else that we used to do. Whenever we're working on making cars be real smooth and all, we loosen the engine mounts and we loosen the transmission mounts and we put it in gear and let everything rock around and find out where it wants to be. And with it still sitting there where it was, we tighten it up. Got that? That makes everything smooth and makes it ride right where it wants to be, so it's not down.
That's how we did it a lot.
All right.
I just want to know.